Podcasts, possibly the final frontier. These are the voyages of Third Song In with Chris Derrickson and Tom Polachek. Its current 11 season mission to explore strange new topics, to seek out new guests and new songs, to boldly go where no man listens ever. This is our episode about sci-fi shows. I got you to laugh, man.
You did. Never even occurred to me to do that, but I love it.
Yeah, I could have made it better. I came up with it in about 5 minutes, but
Pretty fucking good, I think.
all right.
The nerds
Well,
are back, baby.
let's
We are
go.
back. We're talking top five science fiction television shows. And there's a lot of them, dude.
There are. I know. I think you and I found the same. So what we've done for other topics, just to familiarize our guests, is I do a top five, you do a top five, and then we sort of compare it to what the internet considers to be a top five. And without consulting, you and I found the same list. I think we did the Rotten Tomatoes list, which I think is a solid one. In full transparency, we have seen each other's lists. We have not discussed them. And
And
there's
only
not as
saw
much
them
overlap. Yeah, we just saw them like a couple of minutes ago. We
just a
agreed
few
to
minutes ago.
share them right before, just so we can tally and get to a combined top five if we even do that this episode. But I think our top, Tom, in usual fashion, noted quite a few of those and made notes about them. I was walking around the lake this morning and typed in my top five on my phone, which is pretty much it exemplifies our preparation for these things. And not a lot of overlap, I don't think, on the top five, but I think if we'd expanded it out a little bit, we would have hit a little bit more in common because the ones that you made notes about were all ones that I considered. I
Yeah.
just ended up coming up with a slightly different list. And I went with, just to be clear, we've gone back and forth between best and favorite. I'm a little bit more towards favorite because some of the best ones out there I've not watched, and I
Yeah.
don't want to just go off of reputation if I can avoid it.
Yeah, I did the same thing because there's at least one on your list that I've heard is outstanding, and I've just not gotten around to seeing it yet. So I definitely went with my top five, my personal top five, as opposed to what I think was the most quality programming kind of thing. Although I do think a couple of them are really high uh,
Yeah,
on that what's the word I'm thinking of? Metric.
dude. Oh, yes, metric. There you go.
No, not
That wasn't the
doodle.
word I was thinking of.
But anyway, before we unveil our list to the world, I think it's fair to say that probably all time my favorite TV is science fiction TV.
Yeah.
I like other kinds of stuff, and recently I've been watching, I like sitcoms, for example, and there's a lot of really good dramatic TV, ever since the HBO revolution that brought us Sopranos and then all those AMC shows. I like other kinds of TV, and I watched a ton of it, obviously, but I just love sci-fi, and I always kind of come back to science fiction stuff, to the extent that there are certain shows, short-lived shows that I will rewatch at least once a year with my kids just for the hell of it.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at a bit of a disadvantage right now because my household hates science fiction. Like I can't watch science fiction in this house unless I'm by myself, and I'm
Oh,
unfortunately
really?
rarely by myself. Like even if it has a hint of science fiction, it's like what was it, Fringe or something? There was a show that was a little bit more detective-y, I think, and
Yeah, it's kind of X-Files-ish, I think. I didn't watch
yeah,
much of it.
yeah, and it was. I mean, it's not like I struggled with that a little bit on my list. That the difference between like not hard sci-fi because not any of these are really hard sci-fi, but like true sci-fi, almost space-like versus little just the
Like
man in
alternate future.
the man in the it was the man in the high castle. Is that the
Yes.
show? Yeah. So that's alternate reality or alternate future, which is certainly science fiction, but not quite the same. Anything that has that weird even if it's a possible science thing, I've always been attracted to. And I
Yeah.
think that's why I don't think I'm ruining anything. I'm sure it's on at least one of our lists, but that's why X-Files was so cool. Um,
Hmm.
because it at its core was more of a detective show. And of course, there were two threads with X-Files. One was the more conspiracy theory thread, and the other one was a little bit more episodic or whatever. And I loved both. That's why it was such a great show. But if it has, I forget the show I was watching, but we were watching and it seemed like a straightforward cop show. And then something really bizarre happened that was clearly science fiction, and click, off went the TV. It was like, fuck. I was like, that wasn't even that big of a deal. Somebody turned it into a monster. It's fine. So you are at a bit of an advantage as far as more recent sci-fi, or at least more depth of sci-fi watching. But I think I can hang with you a little bit on this one.
Yeah, no, just based on earlier conversations. I mean, we've touched on science fiction shows in other episodes talking about, technically other topics. But it seems to me that not only have we watched a lot of the same shows, but you've watched some, like Fringe, for example, that or at least parts of some that I've not gotten to yet for one reason or another. But I do love good old spaceships and aliens and sci-fi. I really, really dig that stuff.
So where does our favorite wizard fit into it? Jim Butcher's series. Is that more fantasy, do you consider, or
Yeah, I would call
okay,
that fantasy. His in particular, I think it's even a subgenre because there's something called urban fantasy,
okay.
which who's the guy that the guy who did Sandman,
Oh yeah, yeah. Neil Gaiman.
right? Neil Gaiman is a master of urban fantasy where you take kind of wizards and magic and those kind of worlds and drop them into present day. And that I don't consider those things to be sci-fi. I love them just as much, truthfully. But well, I shouldn't say just as much. I think I like sci-fi and hard sci-fi more than I like fantasy. It really depends on the characters. Like I do love the Dresden Files stuff, but that has more to do with the characters and development of the characters than it does the actual underlying elves and werewolves and magic and all that kind of stuff.
And this is probably just making shit up, but I think the reason I like Dresden Files a little bit more is it has a little bit of that noir edge to it. Like it's like
Absolutely.
the happy-go-lucky fantasy stuff doesn't appeal to me at all. And that's probably not a term, but that much more lady, I don't know, the fairies and all that other stuff don't work for me. But Dresden definitely has a wizard noir feel to it. So
Yeah, I agree, and that's definitely what drew me into that. But there was definitely a time where I was heavy into Lord of the Rings, and I was heavy
yeah.
into other types of. There was an author named Fritz Lieber who wrote books. I think his books actually were written back in the 50s and 60s, and he had some characters. There was Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, which was all sword and sorcery type of stuff. So I do like that, but I don't consider those. I didn't consider any of those kind of shows anyway in my list of top five sci-fi, and tended to lean towards things that were more, I guess, science based is the best way to put it.
This should get pretty interesting. I think we're probably going to have like 8 or 9 different shows.
Yeah, that's
We'll
just
talk a
it.
little bit about them.
Like you said at the beginning, when we just shared our lists, and I was certain there was going to be overlap, and there's literally no overlap on our top five shows. Like I'm not sure exactly how we're going to post the information when we put it on the website or on Facebook or wherever, but it's just five ties is all it is. Because if we
Yep.
assign points, we each picked a different one all the way down through five. And I didn't expect that. Like I expected that when we were going to talk about when we talk about the top five women of color in music. I thought
Yep.
for sure we would not overlap, and we overlapped a ton. Here, absolutely none.
And there's at least one that I disqualified. It would have been much higher on my list, but we'll get there when we get there, and I'll explain why. And it probably wasn't a fair disqualification. So
Uh,
I'm going to start, and we're
all
going to
right.
go from 5 backwards. And I always like to go on my fifth pick something that's a little off. Not that it's not serious, but something that has appealed to me, and I can understand that it may not be considered a top five. I almost went with Sliders, which I've talked about on a previous episode. It must have been one when we did Years, but it was one of my previous recommendations. But I've already talked about that one. So I went with almost an homage to The Simpsons because it's like The Simpsons in space,
Yes.
Futurama. So I love Futurama. My son Eli loves to watch it. We talk about it a lot. I feel like that had to make it into somebody's top five list, so it made it into mine.
Yeah, I also very much like that show. That I think was created by
Yep,
Groening,
yeah,
or maybe
I,
not Groening, but the art looks like his. And like you said, it feels like The Simpsons in space. I love that show. And like The Simpsons, it is a very smart animated
yeah,
comedy. It just happens to be set in space, or not in space so much, but set in the future, I guess, is what that one
yeah.
is. And if you look at my long list, it made my long list, which is very long, of course, because they always are. But I could see that easily breaking into a top five just because it's so entertaining, and also lasted forever and then got canceled, then came back, I think, and
Yeah.
I think that show's had an interesting history.
And you were right. And as much as we love The Simpsons, is it Groening? So he's the creator of Futurama. So
Is he? Yeah, I
Yeah,
thought he was because I knew he's the creator of The Simpsons, and I think it was like his next foray into TV
yeah.
was creating that. But and that one, by the way, on the Rotten Tomatoes list, that one is number 17. So you're not
Hmm.
off as far as what
Yeah.
the so-called experts think. They put it in the top 20. So and it was definitely, as I said, on my long list of favorite shows. For me, number five was a show that I don't know if you've heard of. It's part of a universe of shows that started with a movie way back in, shit, I think it was early 90s that the movie Stargate came out. That
Oh
was,
yeah.
I think Kurt Russell was in it. And it was a good movie. I remember seeing it, but not in the theater or anything. I think I rented it somewhere along the line. And I thought, oh, this is pretty cool. It's got, the premise is that you can travel all over the universe using these. They discovered this ancient technology that creates these portals, and you can go like anywhere in the entire universe. And after the movie, there was a TV show called Stargate, and then there was another TV show. I think it was called Stargate Atlantis, maybe. I think there were two or three spinoffs of the original TV show. And a very short lived spinoff was called Stargate Universe. And the concept of and that is that these people, this group, this crew traveled through a gate that they had discovered that was different than all the other gates they'd gone to. And it put them on a spaceship that was traveling outside of any known or mapped part of the universe at all. And it was going, I think, away. Like it was going away from, whatever. It was this deep space exploration ship, but they got on it and the gate shut down on them. They couldn't return. And they were trapped then on this ship that they didn't have control of and only had access to certain parts of it. And it was just, I thought, I never watched the other Stargate TV shows, even though I think they were really popular and probably are on other people's list. And it only lasted two seasons and it ended like on a cliffhanger. Like it didn't end in a satisfying way, but I just loved it. And I thought it was such a cool twist on that whole Stargate concept. And I just, I had a lot of shows to consider for the fifth selection, but I really, really like that. And I actually rewatch it every few years and as I start to rewatch, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot how good this was. And then I get to the last episode of season two, and I'm like, motherfucker, we're never gonna know what happens. And in fact, I was so interested in it, and I found out that I couldn't be the only person because there's a comic book, and again, fairly short lived, but there was a comic book that was like a short run series that provided an end to the story. And I had to read that comic book just for some kind of satisfaction to find out what happened to all those characters. But I recommend it highly. It's streaming somewhere now, and I would suggest that if you haven't seen it, you should see Stargate Universe, which was, by the way, number 58 on the Rotten Tomatoes list. So
Huh.
again, not alone, but certainly not in the top 10 for most people.
I need to talk to a comic book writer to write the end of the TV show The Glades. I think I've talked about that one before, where the main character gets shot
Yes.
and it looks like he's gonna die, and then the show gets canceled, and you're like, "There's no way he freaking dies."
Yeah, I bet you there's at least some fan fiction out there somewhere. Everybody has, every single show I think has some fan fiction.
And speaking of a show that probably has a lot of fan fiction, my number four is pretty obvious, and I've already mentioned it, but and I went with X-Files, and it probably could have gone further up my list because I've watched it. It was one of those things, I think it was on Friday nights. I mean, it was like a routine where I'd come home. This is back when TV actually ran, when it ran, not when you get to stream everything. And Friday night was an event because you'd get to watch the new X-Files. And it dropped a little bit, even though I liked both threads. I actually preferred the more episodic one versus the conspiracy stuff on the show.
Oh, you did. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. I mean, I didn't mind it, but I don't know why. That stuff always sort of wears on me. It's like this is oh shit, what's the name of the show?
Like
Damn
Lost
it.
or one of those.
Well, Lost, no, but what was the show? The guy was a former special forces and the computer guy that built the thing that watches everyone, and then they send them the names of people, and they go and save them. Shit, what's the name of that
Quantum
show?
Leap.
No, no, no,
Quantum
that's
Leap.
it's on my
Oh,
list, man.
oh, I'm sorry.
It's very similar. Well, it's just like Quantum Leap, except it's set in New York City pretty much. There's all these cameras, and then the cameras will tell the guy who created the system that someone's either in danger or they're about to kill somebody. It's one or the other. And I'll find
Seinfeld?
it.
Maybe it wasn't Seinfeld.
Yes, Kramer was out killing people.
Yeah, by the way, no idea about the show you're talking about. I
All
cannot
right, I'll get
picture what it
there.
was.
I got AI just turned on my search engine, so it'll find it in like 2 seconds. So, all
Cool.
right, so X-Files is number four for me.
Number four is X-Files. Now, X-Files was on my long list. I do like it. I actually do like the mythology stuff better than the
Yeah.
Monster of the Week stuff. And that's why X-Files was so cool because on top of the show, then they had the movies after, that were kind of interspersed with the show, and they really explored that mythology and all the alien invasion type stuff that was going on. So it didn't make my top five. It would make my top 10 for sure. And that one was excellent.
Person of Interest. That was the show.
I recognize the title, but I didn't know that was the premise. I might have actually watched that show if I realized that's what it was.
Yeah, you should go back and watch it. I think you'll like it. And then it
Yeah.
starts to become much more of the conspiracy web as the show goes on.
By the way, X Files on Rotten Tomatoes list number three all time sci-fi.
Oh,
So
nice.
that's pretty good. And also the other list that I kind of glanced at in terms of what the internet says are the best sci-fi shows. Rolling Stone had X Files at number seven, by the way.
Hmm. I have to look at Rolling Stones list. I didn't look at that one.
Yeah. And speaking of Rolling Stone's list, my number four is Star Trek, the original series.
Yeah.
So the one with Captain Kirk, the one with Spock. That's one where if you watch the series, and a couple years ago I went back, well, I had the goal of trying to watch all of Star Trek, starting with the original series. I tried to watch them chronologically based upon the time frame within the universe. So there are prequels that were made recently that were set before the
Hmm.
original Star Trek. So I tried to watch them in that, and those were really fun to watch. It's a little tough to watch the original series if you try to rewatch the actual shows, just because the effects are so bad and it's so 60s. It's not what we're used to these days, especially when you're talking about meeting aliens and traveling through space. But the concept of Star Trek was so amazing, so groundbreaking, and so important to sci-fi TV. It just still remains one of my favorites. Star Trek is number one on Rolling Stone's list, and it is number five on the Rotten Tomatoes list. It is number four on mine, just because again it spawned so much. And the Star Trek movies, the ones with the original cast were awesome, but then they spawned crossovers and all kinds of other stuff with the next generation, and then it just kept going and going, and now there's this oh shit, there must be a dozen different TV shows that are related one way or the other to this original series, including an animated show called Below Decks, which is hilarious, by the way.
Very nice. And you're a fucking geek.
All right. I didn't even think
Watch
that needed to be said.
watching those shows in chronological order.
I know. Dude,
Uh,
months. It took me like 2 months. I ended up not I couldn't do it with Star Trek. And I wasn't a big fan of Next Generation just because I kind of
huh,
missed it.
yeah.
So with the original Star Trek, I watched the first 4 episodes when it came up. Because again, there's a prequel. I think there's 2 prequel series that I watched, and I watched every episode of those. And then it was time to watch the original series, and I watched like the first 3 episodes, and I was like, I don't think, there's quite a few. Even though it was a short-lived series, there's still back then they would put out like 25 episodes or whatever the number was. So I ended up watching the first few and then the last one, and I did the exact same thing with Next Generation. I watched the first 2 episodes and the last 2 episodes, and then went on to more modern stuff because it was just I mean it would have taken me a year if I wanted to watch everything, but that doesn't change the fact that I'm a fucking geek.
Yeah, and I think some of the comments that you've said show just how different our lists are, but that's all right. We'll get there when we get
Yeah,
there.
no overlaps, no
So my
overlaps at
number
all.
three is one you mentioned, trying to guess what the hell I was talking about when I was referencing Person of Interest. Quantum Leap. I loved that show. It was not heavy. I mean, it was definitely science fiction. It was just a fun, entertaining movie. And every once in a while, there was stuff that made you think. I found him to be, was it Scott Bakula? I
Yes.
found him to be a great lead. And I love the other guy. I should know his name too, but I don't remember his name or his character's name. But that was another show that I watched religiously back when it was on real TV. I did not at all like the new one. I think they tried to reboot it, and I wasn't a fan. So I'm talking about the original Quantum Leap. I don't know where it is on the list. It's probably a little bit lower than some of the others, but that's it. That's a pure favorite.
Yeah,
And
that's on my
I
long
think it was pretty
list.
quality. Yeah.
I agree. I agree. It was on Rotten Tomatoes. It is number, I think I just saw it, number 19. So top 20.
Okay.
I
Top
think
20.
that's fair. I wouldn't put it top 10, but I would put it top 20. I
Yeah.
thought it was great. Dean Stockwell was the guy you were thinking of.
Yeah. That's what it
He's
was.
like he was a great actor and was really important to that show. I thought he was a lot
Yeah.
of fun. I didn't start watching that when it first came out. I caught on, it was 5 seasons and it ended in 93. So it ran from 89 through 93, which is not a great time for us to watch TV, right? Because we were just out of college
Yeah.
and I was just starting law school and we just didn't watch a whole lot of episodic TV. I think I watched the last season or a big chunk of the very end of the season of the final season and loved it and then went back and rented the whole show and kind of watched it again start to finish, but it had a really I think it's I don't know if satisfying is the right word, but it had what I thought was a good conclusion to the overall series. I don't think they knew they were going to get canceled, but they were able to write in a finish that just kind of made it cool to
Yeah.
me. And as I said, definitely on my long list. I absolutely could see that one being picked in the top 5. Mine probably less so. I don't know if you've ever heard of the show Dark Angel. It was number 81 on
Hmm.
Rotten Tomatoes list. So it's there. It's top 100, but most people disagree with me, wouldn't put it as high as I do. But most people aren't head over heels in love with Jessica Alba. So, that's what it comes down to. Jessica Alba, like a 19 or 20-year-old, I think, Jessica Alba playing a genetically engineered super soldier. So it
Hmm.
was just, and a lot of it is that she escapes this compound where they're raising her to become this soldier type. She escapes with some other people who are also the same kind of genetically engineered super people. And the show, at least the first season, is her trying to find her brothers and sisters, these other people that were raised in this compound being trained to kill people. So it's basically just a TV show with a bunch of beautiful people fighting all the time. So it's like great fight scenes, great martial arts scenes, And I would, if they did a reboot and used Jessica Alba today, I would still watch every episode of that show. So that show made it to my number three pick, primarily because of the aesthetics, but it was actually a really fun, interesting show that explored, I think, a lot of interesting ideas, and but they did it in a really beautiful package.
No pun intended at all.
No pun
No.
intended.
I think I might have heard of that one, but I definitely never saw it. I am going to go with number two. I think this is the one you're talking about that you haven't had a chance to watch, but The Expanse. I read all the books. I've not watched the whole series, but I just love the universe there that they've created. And I thought that the shows were pretty loyal to the books while still adding something to make you want to watch. And that's one that anytime I'm alone in the house, I'm going to click that on and keep watching that series. So that's one that it started with the books. I plowed through those, and I think he's done with that series and has moved on to a newer one, which is one that I made a staff pick months and months ago. He's just a really good writer.
That's the show I was referring to. I don't, for some reason, I didn't put where it lands on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't have it down. My guess is
Okay.
it's way the hell up there though, because I've heard nothing but really high critical acclaim for that show, and I've just never seen it. It's one of about three or four shows that are just on my list, and I just have not started to watch it. I'm sure once I start, I will watch all the way through in the span of about a week. But that is, I couldn't vote for that one only because I've not seen a minute of it.
Yeah, and actually, so I don't have to do a post facto. James S. A. Corey is the author. It's
That's
the
right.
pen name of Daniel Abraham and Ty Frank. So it is two guys. I thought it was. I just didn't know who they were.
Yeah, that one is on my list. Again, my guess is that's pretty high up. It's not in the top 10 for Rolling Stone, but I feel like it was higher in the Rotten Tomatoes list. My number two pick is was very close to being number one. It's the show, the new version of Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
That's the one that came out in 2005. I absolutely love that show. I it it's just great hard sci-fi translated to the TV screen better, I think, than any show I've ever seen. It also had all these underlying stories, and there were lots of philosophical questions they tried to address, including the meaning of life and what is life, and AI. In fact, probably watching it these days would make it even kind of more close to home now that everyone is dealing with issues relating to AI and wondering what AI is going to become. If Battlestar Galactica has any truth to it, they are going to revolt and kill us all, or at least try to. Uh, it was Battlestar Galactica was number one on the Rotten Tomatoes list, and I agree with that because I could have very easily made it number one. Listeners to this podcast will probably know the reason it didn't squeeze into number one because there's only one number one sci-fi show for me, but it was number three on the Rolling Stone list. And if you've not watched that show, you really and you like sci-fi, you've got to watch that show. It did everything. The characters were well done. The writing was well done. Every episode, it wasn't a cookie cutter type of show, even though there was this kind of overarching story about the Cylons and their search for old Earth and all these other things. There were also individual episodes that were very personal and very emotional, and it was just a great, interesting sci-fi show. That was my number two.
Nice. And The Expanse was number 10 on the Rotten Tomatoes list.
Yeah, I thought I saw it on that list. I just, for some reason, I didn't jot it down. That I definitely need to watch that one.
All right. It's funny when we do our top fives, I think about Joe Pay and the rest of the guys from the house critiquing and choosing which of the top five they like because I lost on was it the 80s songs? What was no, the movies. I lost on the movies that we picked with Andy. No one liked my list. They all liked yours,
Yeah, I forgot about that.
fuckers.
Yeah, well, there's no accounting
Well,
for taste.
there isn't, which is a perfect segue to my number one, Star Trek: The Next Generation. And I've seen lists where it's not even listed in the top 20. It was number 4 on Rotten Tomatoes list. It's just the show that it's the Star Trek that I enjoy the most. At a certain point, I thought Deep Space Nine was going to be the one that supplanted it. But I started to lose interest in that one after the first season or so. And I really think I mean, there's a lot of great characters. Jean-Luc Picard stands out. He's such a great captain. And not a huge fan of number 2, but he's fine in his role. Data, Worf, and just go down the list. It's a great characters, great show, some really cool stuff. I think it sort of takes, and this is where it gets controversial, Star Trek, the original one, to another level because, special effects and everything else were a little more advanced at that time. Although if I went back and looked, it's probably still pales in comparison to what we do today. But that's my number one, and I'm standing by it.
Yeah, that I think that's probably, if you looked at the numbers, I think it was the longest lived Star Trek series. I think it's probably the most popular in terms of viewership and everything else. I really appreciated how they didn't just try to reboot the
Yeah.
original series. Captain Picard is so different than Captain Kirk in so many ways, and I do think they advanced Gene Roddenberry's ideas when they did the Next Generation. I think it was the same philosophy of science for good, and the idea of exploration being a goal in itself. And I just, again, it kind of ran during a period of time where I didn't catch it when it was originally on TV. And it never really caught my attention afterwards to the extent, maybe because there were just so many episodes, so many seasons. I never really rewatched it until I attempted to see all of Star Trek. And I was just intimidated at that point. So I watched the first couple issues, the last couple, or not issues, first couple episodes, last couple episodes. It's a very important sci-fi TV show, I would say, as far as that goes. It is not, however, my choice because
Yeah.
my choice for now and forever best science fiction TV show is the one season wonder Firefly. I've talked ad nauseum about how much I love that show, how I rewatch it once a year with one of my kids. I just love it. I think it was just so well done. It's not original in the sense that it was just a brand new concept. It's really just a mashup of a Western and a war picture and a sci-fi concept, but they just did it perfectly. I think it was just great writing. Joss Whedon created it, basically, I think wrote all of the episodes in the first season. He's just a genius. You know, he's he's gone into the fantasy side of things as well. He did the TV show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and he also did another sci-fi show that was after that didn't last very long. I just think he's genius when it comes to writing TV, but in particular sci-fi. And for me, there's nothing better than Firefly, which on the Rotten Tomatoes list was number 12, and I think it was slightly higher on Rolling Stone. It was number 10 on Rolling Stone's list. And I see, again, part of it's because it just didn't last very long, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
that
But
was my reason for disqualifying it
yeah,
from my list. And I've not watched the whole series. What I've watched, I really like. But I also, it's funny, I knew for a fact that you were going to make that number one.
yeah, right, of course,
And I figured we'd talk about it anyway. And you're
yeah.
much more knowledgeable of it than I am. So that sort of led to that outcome. It's definitely worthy, I think, of a top 5 for pure quality. It's just a shame that it only lasted one season.
Yeah, that's another one, by the way, that lives on in comic books.
Hmm.
I think it's Boom Studios is a comic publisher, and they have the rights to Firefly, and they've done all kinds of prequel series and ongoing series involving the crew, and they've also done like spin-offs about specific members of the crew, like Jane or I can't think of the Ron Livingston character. He was the preacher, but that's not what they called him. Anyway, so there's actually some pretty cool stories out there in comic book form, but I would they got their one season and they got their movie, and I guess we should be happy with that. But I sure would have
Yeah.
liked to have seen that last a little bit longer.
All right. That's Tom and I's Tom and my top five science fiction TV shows. We will figure, as Tom said, we'll figure out a way to post them on social media, if not on our website, which has been a little difficult to find space for that. But we strongly encourage you to write us, to complain, or to make fun of my picks and to compliment Tom on how much better his are. You can do that at thirdsongin@gmail.com. You can also go to our website, and there's a button you can link to send us a message, and it pretty much does the same thing. So we welcome your comments and feedback, positive or negative. That's why we're doing the top five, to create a little conversation with our listeners. And hopefully this one stirs some thoughts from you all. We appreciate it.
Yeah, this one's hilarious. It's literally five ties
I know.
with no overlapping at all. Let me ask you this though. What about your runners up? Did you have any that almost made the top five or that you wanted to mention?
I mean, I mentioned Sliders. I tried not to go. The one, interestingly enough, that's a TV show that I've never seen, that is based on a series. I got to look it up real quick, and maybe you know it, but it's Silos. The Silos, I think,
No,
is
that's a
what it's
band.
called. No,
I
I
think it's
know they
called.
are.
I think
But
it's.
I saw it as number one on a list, and there was a
Oh, is that
list that I
right?
didn't really recognize. It's just called Silo.
Yeah, that's it.
Um, it was a TV show from 2023. I've not seen that, but in researching for this show, I am definitely going to go seek that out because I've read I think it's a trilogy, and I can't believe I can't remember the guy's name. It'll come up here in 1 second. Hugh Howey. Yeah, so he did a trilogy called, the three books are Wool, Shift, and Dust.
Hmm.
But they're these societies that live, and it's a post-apocalyptic world. They live in these silos, and they start realizing that things aren't as they really thought they were. So I don't want to give it too much away, but it's a really great series of books. And the fact that they've turned it into a TV show, I got to go. I got to go seek that out. But I've not seen it, so I can't recommend it.
Yeah.
But I can definitely recommend the books, though.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I've seen it advertised. I know it's gotten quite a bit of acclaim. I'm looking at the cast. The cast is insane. Rashida Jones, Steve Zahn, Tim Robbins is in it, and the star looks like the lead is Rebecca Ferguson, who's another one of
Hmm.
those actresses that I'm just in love with anyway. So I'm surprised I haven't watched it at all, but I've heard the same thing. I've heard it's supposed to be good, and again, I have also not seen it. But I had so many other ones. Like for example, I didn't. I put the original Star Trek in as my number four, kind of on principle, but probably the Star Trek show I've enjoyed the most in the last few years watching is Star Trek Discovery,
Hmm.
which is this bizarre show that started as a prequel and ended as being like hundreds of years in the future, past where it started and past the original series, past the Next Generation, that kind of stuff. And it was just, I just really, really enjoyed that show a ton. The lead in that was Sonequa Martin Green. She played someone who ends up kind of, she starts out being in the doghouse, literally being in the brig and being kicked out of Starfleet because of some action she took that endangered the entire crew. But then she came back. She ends up becoming a captain, and she's just one of my favorite captains. Actually, she's just fantastic. So that one almost made my list. And in terms of what I've enjoyed watching more, I've enjoyed Discovery much more than I have the original series. But in terms of an actual impact in my life, I still have to go with the original series where I did. But I had Quantum Leap listed like you did. I had X Files listed. There are a couple, there's a show that streams, I think, on Apple now called For All Mankind, which is both an alternate history one, but also about space travel. And I really, really enjoy that show a lot. That almost made it to number five for me. What I found interesting, more for me than really than you, but neither of us mentioned any of the Star Wars shows, which are all streaming on Disney now. I like almost every one of those shows, and I really liked Andor, which got a lot of critical acclaim last year. Fantastic show, and I do like all those. And it's funny to me that they didn't pop into my head when it was time to come up with the top five list. I just, or even more than that, I like it's not on my my list going into the top 10 even. But I do like those shows. I do enjoy watching.
Well, that's going to bring us to the segment that has, like a good character in a science fiction show, risen from the dead. Loft of Wisdom.
You better open up your eyes, babe, because fools do get wise.
Loft of Wisdom is our opportunity to put a quote online, I guess. I don't know if that's an opportunity. I don't know if people really care about that. But we like to, back when we were in school, we used to love to jot down funny quotes or interesting quotes that we thought really made an impact on us. And we decided to continue to do that here at the end of season 11. And what is your quote for the Loft of Wisdom this episode?
I had a number of them that I was going to do, and then I saw this one as I was researching, and it ties back to music, which is such an important part of our podcasts. Jimi Hendrix once said, "Imagination is the key to my lyrics. The rest is painted with a little science fiction." I thought that was a cool quote.
That is a cool quote. I've never heard that one before.
I never have either. And I mean, I listened to Jimi Hendrix. I'm not dove into his music a whole bunch, but it just seems very fitting for what I know about him.
Excellent. My quote is from Admiral Adama from Battlestar Galactica. It's a reference, it's a craps reference, a gambling reference, which frankly I barely understand because I've never actually played craps. I've read about it 2 or 3 times with the thought that I wanted to go to a casino and play because it sounds like a cool type of game to play, and then I always chicken out. So the quote is, sometimes you have to roll the hard six. So as I said, don't really get it when it comes to craps, other than I know you have to roll dice. But I looked it up, and it means you got to make the gutsy, more challenging decisions sometimes. Sometimes you just have to do it the hard way is what it means. And I thought it was a really cool, kind of tough quote. And Admiral Adama is a great character in that show. So that'll be my quote for the Loft of Wisdom, which you can find at thirdsonginpodcast.com.
And to go from a really tough quote to one that thought you might go with, Stephen Wright's comment, "When I die, I'm going to donate my body to science fiction."
I wish I had thought of that one. That's a great one. That's really good. That's
right.
loft worthy for sure.
It is from Loft of Wisdom to Post Facto.
It's a mistake. It's a mistake.
Post Facto is where Tom and I will correct things from previous episodes that we got wrong, or complete thoughts, or just add something that we thought of and wanted to get it onto the show, which is what I think Tom's going to do now.
That is correct. A long time ago, you made some recommendations for a book series that we talked about called the Hyperion Cantos. And it kind of ironically, I eventually started reading them. They're very long sci-fi books. They're very hard science fiction. I can remember when you described them and recommended them, one of the things you talked about was how the author didn't stop to explain what he was, the vocabulary or the references. So you get lots of references to weapons and travel and vehicles and all kinds of other stuff. And you have to figure it out from the context. And I like when sci-fi writers write that way. I read the very first book, which was called Hyperion, at your recommendation a while back. It was such a long book that I had to take a break before I started the next one. And I just started the second book in the series, which is The Fall of Hyperion. I'm about 40, 50% of the way through it. And I would normally wait till I finished the book to give you any kind of post facto report. But over the weekend, I found out that Dan Simmons passed away. Yeah. So the author of the Hyperion Cantos just died while I was reading one of his books, which just felt weird to me and felt like it was worthwhile making the comment. So what I can say, 40 or 50% through the second book, is I agree with your recommendation. Really enjoy it. Sometimes it feels like you get overwhelmed with the science of the science fiction of it all. But he's created some really interesting characters. And aside from the fact that there's so many characters that sometimes it's hard to keep track of them, if you read on a regular basis, this isn't one where you can put down for a couple of days and then get back to it. You kind of have to just keep plowing through at least a few pages every night. But I'm so curious to see the end of this story. I'm really looking forward to continuing to read through the series. So that's my post facto is R.I.P. Dan Simmons, who may or may not have been a good person, but he was definitely a hell of a writer.
He was, and that whole thing's made me think a little bit more about that. I'm not sure if I can write a whole blog about it, but yes, he was a fantastic writer. I can't think of a book of his I read that I didn't enjoy. He wrote in multiple genres, so I think he was a very, very talented writer. That's as much as I can say for certain.
Yeah.
So,
Now we have staff picks.
Just around the corner from you.
staff picks is where Tom and I recommend new stuff, music, books, movies, TV shows. It's either stuff that's recently been released or will be released, or sometimes the stuff that we just found out about, even if it's 20 years old. So, what's your staff pick for this week, Tom?
My staff pick is the new season of Shoresy, which is now out on Hulu. As we record, it's been out for probably a couple weeks. By the time you listen to this, it's going to be more like a month or so. I love the show Shoresy. It is just hilarious. It's a short sitcom type of situation. It's basically about a bunch of hockey players in Canada, and it is just nonstop jokes and funny stuff. It's also a little crass, like the language is a little crass. There's lots of nudity, or at least near nudity. So the subject matter gets a little dicey sometimes. It's definitely a kind of a hard R type of show to watch. You don't want your kids watching it. But it is absolutely hilarious. One of the best things about the character Shoresy, who is the lead character, is the way he just fucks with people verbally. And one of his gigs, aside from playing for this kind of semi-pro hockey team way up north in Canada, is he's a ref for high school games. And they will just cut to high school games where he's standing there with his arms crossed on the ice, like near the bench where the players are, just hazing these high school kids mercilessly. It is so funny. But then there are times where they get back to him or get back at him, and particularly they make jokes about how old he's getting because he just retired at that point and he's going to be a coach. Uh, one of the kids at one point, he's standing there with his arms crossed, and one of the kids on the bench says, "Hey, Shoresy, getting into any good soups lately?" Which I think is a fucking great joke about being old that I've never heard any version of in my life. But what's even funnier is Shoresy's response to the kid is, because they always start out with "fuck you." And he's like, "Fuck you, Smitty. Your mom puts so many toys up her ass. I call her Anal Fisher Price." So, like I said, you gotta be willing to listen to quite a few vulgarities. But if you're okay with that, the season 5 of Shoresy is outstanding. You start from the beginning of the series because every episode is really funny and it's really rapid fire. But it's also a sweet show, and it gets into the relationships between teammates, relationships between Shoresy and the girl that he loves, and it just puts it all together really, really well. And I recommend it highly.
My staff pick is Bill Callahan's new album, Days of 58. I have a couple of his earlier songs on my favorites list. I'm sure I've put it on our playlist, at least one of them on our playlist before. But this one I think is going to get me to dive into his music a little bit more. There's a great review, and I don't usually recommend them because I find them a little pretentious, but Pitchfork has a really nice review of his latest album and talks about how this album is him becoming much more personal, talking about, approaching death. I'm assuming 58 is his age, and you and I are 59. So,
Mm.
I don't like to think about when people are thinking about death at such an early age, and I also think about your dad because he hates when we dive too much into our personal feelings, so he may not want to listen to this album. But uh, one of my favorite lines from the song is from the song, I think it's Pathol OG. I don't want to say it saved my life, but it gave me a life. And he's talking about music. And he says, it's how he immersed himself in his music and how it became a way to avoid people, which sounds like an awesome idea. So, it's just His delivery is not going to be for everyone. It's very much that singing slash talking. Some of the songs he just starts off talking, but it's all about the lyrics on this one and his evolution from a much more poetic, more not hypothetical, but much more imagery and poetry, to really talking about his feelings, something I can relate to. So I'm going to dive into this album and work my way backwards. But I definitely encourage people who like thoughtful music to go and check out Bill Callahan's new album.
Cool. And speaking of albums and music, we're ready for playlist picks. Every
Nice
episode,
segue.
Chris. Oh, yeah, see, I segued. Accidentally segued. Every episode, Chris and I pick a song to put on our season-long playlist. And this week, I went with the sci-fi theme, and I'm adding the song Captain Kirk by Bob Schneider from the album I'm Good Now, 2004. I'm a big Bob Schneider fan, but I realized I've only really listened to one album, which was Songs Sung and Played on Guitar at the Same Time, which came out in 1999. I love that album. Didn't realize how many he had, and I was looking around for a good sci-fi song, and this came up, and I thought this is absolutely perfect. And it turns out I'm Good Now, also a great album. So
I agree. I have that song on my favorites list. Not Captain Kirkwood, but I'm Good Now. I want one that may not seem like it's science fiction, but it is. It's got a science fiction reference. In fact, it references my number one sci-fi TV show. It's Banditos by the band The Refreshments, who I love. Roger Klein was the lead singer, songwriter. He's still around, putting out good music. Banditos became a bit of a hit at like hockey games and otherwise. Otherwise, use that twice. Otherwise, wise. Shut up. All right. So, Banditos is a very upbeat, fun song. As I said, became a bit of a sports anthem. But the reference is they are banditos and they're crossing the border trying to do a heist. And the lines are, "We'll give your ID card to the border guard. Yeah, your alias says you're Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the United Federations of Planets, because he won't speak English anyway. Everybody knows that the world is full of stupid people." So it's got both that reference, which I love, and the Captain Jean-Luc Picard reference, which I also love. So check out Banditos by The Refreshments.
Yep, you can find our season-long playlist wherever you listen to your music, Spotify, Apple Music, etc., etc. You can search for Third Song In. You can also search for T Polachek, which is my personal username, and that's how we post all of those things. So at least on Spotify, that's the best way probably to search for it. On other music providers, usually if you search Third Song In, you'll come up with each season playlist that we put out thus far.
All right, that brings us to the end of episode 8 of season 11. Third Song In is recorded in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and Joliet, Illinois.
As we said earlier, you can email us at thirdsongin@gmail.com. We'd appreciate any questions, comments, any commentary about our top 5 sci-fi TV shows is welcome. I'd like to give a shout out to new listeners, Mark and Craig, who reached out to us through our email with some suggestions, including a great suggestion for a potential new guest.
We'd also ask you to check out our website, thirdsonginpodcast.com. All kinds of stuff on there, including links to our weekly blogs, the episodes. You can actually click and link to the episode and listen to it there. We also have an episode spotlight where Tom and I will pick a little video to put up that exemplifies the episode we just did. This one should be a fun one. I can't wait to figure out what we're going to put up on the website for this one.
Please follow us, rate and review the podcast wherever you listen to it. Give us all of your motherfucking stars, please. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We're now on Pandora. We're on Overcast and YouTube Music as well. Please share and tell people about us.
Tell people about our playlist too. As Tom mentioned, all the places you stream your music, you can find our playlist. So we have the season-long ones, which we've talked about. And we also have special guest episodes where Tom and I will work with our guests to create a 10-song playlist. All of those can be found, as Tom said, by searching for Third Song In.
You can find us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky. We post things about Third Song In on those sites, but we also try to keep you updated on the dates, details, and releases from our guests, both past and future. So please follow us on our social media.
Our social media includes Substack, where Tom and I post our blogs. We'd ask you, if you can, to subscribe to us there. If you do that, you'll get the blog in an email form on Friday morning. We think we're putting out some pretty good stuff. So go over to Substack, look for Third Song In, and subscribe to us, please.
Please tune in next week for our interview with author and founder and former owner of Bloodshot Records, Rob Miller. Should be fun.
And you've been listening to Third Song In with Chris Derrickson and Tom Polachek. Thanks for listening. No one liked my list. They all liked yours.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Fuckers.
Yeah, well, you know, there's no accounting for taste.
We got a pretty high bar. That wasn't terrible.
That wasn't terrible. We continue to speak English throughout the whole thing.
Very nice. And you're a fucking geek.